We're gonna get this all dialed in one day. Until then, we're just goofy as fuck. Okay, but we have serious business. We really do. I feel like, ever since I was a child, I had this compulsion. I felt compelled to. I mean, I wouldn't have used the word like illuminate as a child, but I always had this conviction that that we could wake up from the slumber of religion and politics and nationalism and racism and all the ism schism games, as Bob Marley so eloquently phrased it. And it's happening. It's happening, and I think it's only really in the last week or so that it really hit me that this knowledge that I've had since I was a child is legitimate. I mean, it's not that I didn't know that on some level, but I've still carried a tremendous amount of doubt, and a lot of that is just personal stuff like insecurity and also it's the matrix mind. Even someone like myself that has lived most of my life on the fringes of society, that I never really went to school. I mean, I literally stopped going to school in 5th grade. I'm self-educated. I wasn't exposed to the indoctrination of a political family. They had no political orientation. They had no religion. But I've still noticed that it's really difficult for me to accept, that the universe is a living mind, and that the synchronicities and the capacity to influence my experience solely with my consciousness, and the spiritual entities that I've encountered, even though the information that they've offered me has been consistently accurate. It's like I still couldn't really accept the reality of it, and I think that really speaks volumes about the level of the indoctrination and the programming and the difficulty in transcending the influence of culture. If it's that much of a struggle for me, and granted, there are other elements to it. I mean, I'm very much determined that, I've always felt that metaphysics is not a matter of opinion. Metaphysics, that the spiritual realm, that spiritual reality, spiritual knowledge is almost as objective in its actuality as our normal material existence, and I think that it's a little bit more individualized, but that there are fundamental truths that can be accessed through experience, and I've always been really determined to engage my skepticism and rational thinking, and to always question myself and analyze and second guess. I mean, it's a hell of a balancing act, though, and I think I'm just now really getting good at it and balanced to where, if you take skepticism too far, you can totally neutralize yourself, which I've absolutely done that to myself without question. But when I see these ideas that I've carried with me since childhood, I was watching a couple of researchers that were talking about DMT, 5-MeO DMT experiments that had been done at Berkeley, and they were theorizing that that DMT, the molecule, somehow has some kind of fundamental purpose in our consciousness, and that exposure to DMT can actually it's not just that it alters our perception of the universe, it changes our experience of the universe. And it was just such an incredible thing for me as a person that has experienced that and had to try to reconcile my experience with the deterministic matrix reality that that I have had to. Yeah, thanks to guitar. This is a crazy story too. Speaking of synchronicities, and I'm always talking about like the symmetry in the order. This is something I'm still working on, so my articulation isn't quite where I wanted to be on this idea. But this guitar is a knockoff of my real guitar, or my actual guitar, that my mother bought me when I was in my 20s for my birthday, I guess. It's a PRS, it's really expensive. This one is, a third of the price, and it's not a PRS, but it's the same color, and it is it's a knockoff of the exact model that I played in the States. And when I went with my mother just before she killed herself to the music store to look at guitars, the only guitar that they had that was usable by my standards, I guess, was this one. And it was just an insane thing, like, here I am in Ecuador, there's only 8 guitars in the city of Loa for sale or whatever, not very many to choose from at all. And my guitar's model wasn't particularly popular, and there I am with my mother who bought the other one, and there's this knockoff it's just, it really is incredible how the universe expresses these things. And I think at a certain point, we have to overcome incredulity, but still temper it with a reasonable amount of skepticism and maintain that balance. And I feel like that's really what I have to offer, if anything, in terms of like a unique perspective on this stuff, because my observation is that generally people either fall into one of two categories. They're either totally deterministic, totally just, material. Deterministic is the wrong word. I use that word out of context too much. It's materialism. Materialist people, right? Like total, complete atheist, nothing but random probability. Matter is just a bunch of gobbledygook that somehow, a sophisticated organization into this incredibly complex universe. By the way, seeing through that isn't that difficult, you guys. More and more people are noticing this. Scoffing and rolling your eyes is not an argument. Just in case, this hasn't occurred to you. And when you present these ideas that, maybe the evolution isn't the whole story and people just scoff and roll their eyes, if you really press them, you're going to determine that the only reason they're doing that is because they've been convinced that all of these really smart people must know what they're talking about. It's not that they actually really know how it all works, or, so what I'm getting at there is that the reality is that biological life, there are so many components that would have had to configure themselves at random within a certain little time frame. The fundamental issue with evolutionary biology in that sense is that they talk about how there were these vast amounts of time that facilitated the organization of all these coincidental random mutations, so that we arrived at the level of complexity and sophistication that we have in our, come on, the human brain is more sophisticated than any supercomputer, and we're supposed to believe that this happened at random, that it was an accident. But what I'm saying there is that not that evolution is not real. No, I don't think so, Charles. I don't think so. It's not that I don't think that evolution is real, but it's obviously not the whole story. And I guess too much coffee has got me going on all sorts of different tangents, like spidering out. But it's entirely obvious to me that these black and white kind of ontological dispositions are not sufficient. They do not do the job. They are unsatisfactory and incorrect. And I think that if we had a system that was complete and total and true, a spiritual system, a political system, any system at all that was actually fundamentally rooted in truth, we would not have the kind of issues that we have in our culture, in our society with the misuse of technology. Obviously, we are not being guided by the light of truth. We are, something is amiss, and I think we know what it is. I've been hearing an increasing number of people from all different walks of life, different races, different different influences in their lives, realizing that we are somehow fundamentally pure awareness. There's this guy, I don't know his name, but I just came across him on TikTok, and he's super ghetto black guy. I think he overdoes it on purpose to be funny, but he's obviously from like the deep south in the middle of nowhere, and he sounded like more advanced than the fucking Buddha the other day, there are old white people that, are talking exactly the same way. All of these people from completely disparate influences and environments that are coming to this realization of these fundamental truths. And this is the antidote to the atom bomb. This is gnosis. This is the collective awakening that I've been anticipating since childhood, and it's actually happening. That doesn't mean that we can sit back and rest on our laurels. It means that it is time for action. We have to take responsibility. I saw, what is that psychologist, really effeminate, pisses people off all the time, even though he's usually right about everything. God, I can't remember his name at the moment, but you guys probably know who I'm talking. Peterson, I think, is his last name. He was talking about how, the problem with psychedelics is that when you acquire this level of wisdom, and then you don't have the capacity to make investitures with it. Jordan Peterson, yeah. And an investiture is when you're like grounding out your spiritual gains. And he's absolutely correct. And again, this is something that I feel like I'm just now at 42 starting to get a handle on. Freebird. I'm actually going to play Mississippi Half Step, and the reason I'm going to do it is partly for my own purposes. I haven't, and partly because, I don't want to ruin. Okay, so the Grateful Dead, some of you guys might not be familiar with the idea, but the idea was that you were accessing a collective mind, and then things would come through the collective, sort of like channeled improvisations that sort of transcend what is normally possible. And so, if the spontaneity is removed, it's like this feeling of catching lightning in a bottle isn't possible. So I have these backing tracks where the guys are simulating the improvisations of the Grateful Dead, but if I play along with them too many times, then there's no spontaneity because I know what's going to happen. So, I can't rehearse that much. And you might be able to tell, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, all right, so this thing about DMT and the body compensating by producing less endogenously. My experience suggests that DMT, it has some kind of incredible capacity to not create tolerance. In fact, it just becomes easier and easier and easier to, like the physical sensations are easier, your comfort level grows. I've noticed that if I take ayahuasca for a week straight, each and every time it's less cartoonish. The transition from the normal state to the deeper states is less physically difficult. It just gets easier and easier. And I think it's even possible that the dosage that's required is less and less and less. And again, I think that it's that Dennis McKenna and others that have suggested this are probably correct that what DMT does is actually roll back the veil so that we are actually peering into ultimate reality. It's not a drug effect. It's not hallucination. It's just it's an experience of ultimate reality. So it doesn't seem that way to me. Yeah, another thing that's really surprised me about DMT and ayahuasca is that, you know, if you have experienced, you know, LSD or psilocybin or any of the more mild psychedelics, you would think that drinking 20,000 cups of ayahuasca would eventually cause you to lose your mind. Another thing that occurred to me is like, you know, some of the facilitators that I know, I can't imagine doing this myself. I don't think I will ever facilitate 3 to 5 nights a week for 10 years, but I do know people that have done that. And you know, there are breaks in their schedule, but so they're vomiting, and you know, the facilitator, if it's really a shaman, is going to vomit 10 times as much as all of the people that are participating in the ceremony, because one of their functions in the context of the ceremony as facilitator is to absorb all of the trauma and negative energy of the group and expel it from the circle by means of vomiting. And so one day I was talking to this facilitator that I worked with a whole lot, and I noticed that his teeth were not rotten. And is it bulimia where people stick their fingers down their throat and vomit a lot? Those people tend to have really, really bad teeth because the stomach acids will destroy the teeth. So it turns out that the reason is that the ayahuasca is so alkalizing that it neutralizes the stomach acid so that it doesn't dissolve the enamel in your teeth, which is just kind of a side note that this, you know, to me that kind of thing is evidence of the intelligence in nature that science has denied the existence of for so long. But what I was saying is that even the facilitators I know that have drank 20,000, 50,000 cups, it doesn't stop working, and they're not insane. Like, if anything, they're more sane than your average person, like more balanced, more emotionally, even totally down to earth. You know, they don't like have, I probably have wilder stories and crazier, I don't want to say beliefs, but ideas than the ayahuasqueros that I know. Although the alien thing, this was great. Well, I once told the story of my encounter with the Native Americans in New Mexico and the Star Tribes, and the shaman actually started like making fun of me, and it was crazy, man. I mean, he just totally like disrespectfully just tore me to the ground over this story, and then a couple of months ago, he rather sheepishly approached me and said, I have seen UFOs above Vilcabamba lately, several times. I'm like, really, buddy? That was great. Yeah, man, I feel like your success will be your proof, right? Like my inner guides once told me that, and they actually told Aleister Crowley that in the book of the Law too. Your success will be your proof, and this idea that like all is metaphor, that like all this is really testing my capacity for description, but it's like the material is a reflection of the immaterial. It's all metaphor. It's like the material world is like crystallized metaphor. And this is what is meant when, you know, it's written in that Masonic book, the true scripture is writ large upon the land for those that can see it. This is the kind of thing that he was talking about. And so what I'm offering as an example and proof of this is that as we come to access the universal mind, that we all come to this sort of process of gnosis in mass. It's no coincidence that we also are encountering aliens on a global scale simultaneously, because as we expand our consciousness, the parameters of our perception change as well, and so. It's truly an amazing thing, and as I'm always saying, truth is self-substantiating, and that what I just described, I think properly understood, is a really great example of that. And I think that as our consciousness comes into contact with this universal mind, we become intergalactic citizens. A lot of the demons that have clung to us since the Dark Ages and throughout human history, they are going to be evaporated by the light. Man, I just had another really good one bubbling up in this. Oh, okay. So another way to consider that is that this idea of a microcosm expressing in the macrocosm. The inter-region, I don't know if that's the right word. The default mode network in the brain is communicating with the conscious mind. The proper terminology is escaping me at the moment. But we have this inter-region communication of the brain that's enhanced with psychedelics. So our own internal individual mind is having this sort of holistic awareness and this contact with an other that is somehow also not other. I mean, it's always been part of our being. And so as this internal process occurs, it is happening as an external process as well. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's all there's really good images out there of how like galaxies and nebulas and whatnot, like they are just like neural pathways. And I actually wrote, I think there's a link to my blog in the description of this video. I used to always have it there, but there's a really good article, there's a link to it in one of my blogs where they talk about how this astrophysicist that also had a background in neurobiology realized that the visible universe had the same structure as neural pathways to an extent that is just absolutely extraordinary. And it's been so long since I've read it that I'm not going to be able to regurgitate it now. But it's definitely worth reading. And so the knowledge of the ancients is being proven true. A global consensus on our metaphysical reality is emerging. It's not a new consciousness, but it is a sort of a restoration of the original unity of consciousness. And I think it's also not necessary to view all of the disharmony and the evolutionary pain that we've experienced on the journey here. All of that shadow informs the shape that it will take. All of the experiences, all of the pain and pleasure, all of the glory and suffering, all of the light and all of the shadow is all to be integrated into the new paradigm, and it is to be the summation of all of that. And I mean, you know, people, one of the great questions of philosophy, I guess, has always been like, why the suffering? You know, why the, you know, if there's a God, then why would it put us through all of this shit? And I think, you know, the answer is that if this had all happened just on the plane of the imagination, in hyperspace, in the realm of the DMT entities, it wouldn't have the same value because it didn't have any cost. If there's no transaction, then it's cheap. Capitalism isn't necessarily wrong. And it works so well in a way because it is predicated on actual laws of nature and laws of the universe. They are. It is a reflection of that. This is one of the tools that, you know, Freemasons use when they're conceiving of systems, as magicians are wont to do. incorporating these laws of nature into the systems that we create. This is why the pyramid is one of the symbols of the elite. The broad base with the 1% at the top, it's the most stable geometric shape. And so if you're trying to build a society, a culture that will not topple, then and this goes back to what I was saying about how all material manifestations are metaphor, because you can create a society with a pyramidal structure that is not tangible. It's not like an actual pyramid made of blocks, but it still in concept has that structure, and so it is still informed by the same laws, by the same it still has the structure and the stability, if you follow me. Do me a favor too, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Please do support us on Patreon to access premium content. I'm putting together a ritual magic course. I'm also doing what I'm calling synergistic syncretic spiritual systems, 4 one-on-one sessions, 1 hour per month. And I'm teaching the people everything I know about shamanism, about hermetic magic, philosophy, physics, all of the things that interrelate, how they interconnect. I feel that it's a really powerful system for catalyzing consciousness. And all right, so how about another song? Actually, before I do that, some of you have inquired as to my health, and it's, it is really true that when the shit hits the fan, it all hits at once. Yeah, I used to say that I was born at the wrong time, that the 1960s, would have made more sense. But actually, I think this is the most exciting time to be alive. There's so much potential, and I think that if we understand the universe in light of the Hermetic teachings, of the ancient knowledge, of the interplay of antinomies, the balance of opposites, we can understand why it is that there has to be so much chaos in order to produce a new order, that pressure creates diamonds, and that these physical manifestations are just metaphors for the energetic processes in consciousness that they're expressing. And so whether you're talking about coal producing a diamond, or the evolution of a culture producing its Ubermensch, or it's the birth pains, no matter how you articulate it, all of these metaphors are fundamentally expressing the same thing, and there's no escaping the universality of the laws that create these metaphors. So, before I start the song, I wanted to mention, since you guys have inquired about my health situation, I have had chronic fatigue syndrome since I was very young, and DMT actually really, really helps. And it was crazy because the first time I smoked DMT, the symptoms actually more or less went away. And then I discovered that the gematria for the phrase, or for the word N-dimethyltryptamine, had the same numerical value as the phrase cure for chronic fatigue syndrome. And then a year or two ago, there was an article that I found that was talking about how they had determined that DMT can treat chronic fatigue syndrome. And no one really knows what chronic fatigue syndrome is. And I'm going to do a live stream about this soon, like living with chronic illness and how to deal with people. Because, I've almost punched so many of my friends right in the mouth because there are certain things that you just like, when people say to me like, oh, you don't look sick, or, it's just, it's such a struggle to do anything. After decades of that, when people invalidate it, man, it's just like, it's infuriating. But so on top of that, like over the last year or so, I've been getting a lot worse, and it's starting to look like I have chronic Lyme disease, which makes sense because I was living in Mendocino County. I probably got bit by a tick, and so there are spirochetes drilling into my brain and my soft tissue all throughout my body, my joints. It's not great, I guess. You know, that's really the response to the inquiry. Like, I mean, and the thing is, if you don't treat it within the first 30 days, they say it's really not treatable. So, all I can do at this point is turn to plant medicine with renewed dedication, and it seems to be working to some extent. I'm taking a mixture of a bunch of different anti-inflammatory carnivore diet cures Lyme disease. I mean, I think grandfather tobacco told me that if I just drink a bunch of tobacco, it'll kill the spirochetes, and I believe that. The thing is that just drinking tobacco is just so, it's just miserable. But, you know, I guess it's like, if you're going to cure cancer, if your only choice is to suffer or die, otherwise people choose to take chemo. So, if I have to drink a bunch of tobacco again, I've done it before. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it's definitely difficult. So at any rate, it's definitely a struggle at the moment, and we do appreciate your support. There's I think I put it in the chat even, there's the PayPal, Zelle, email, and then there is a Cash App address and the, what is that, Binance Smart Chain address to send us crypto. Again, we're demonetized. I do all this for free, basically, more or less. We get no money from advertising. The super chat is not a thing, so we really do appreciate your support. All right, well, I'll play another song, I guess. I just wish I had a better setup, man. It's really frustrating that I have to use this ghetto ass. But you guys are wonderful and forgiving. You understand that I'm in the jungle with limited resources. Does it sound okay out there? I mean, I hope so. I'm gonna go back and listen to the recording and see if maybe I can place the speaker better. I mean, this is my sound system. It's kind of ridiculous. This little amp over here. But let's see what happens. Pause that one. You gotta be kidding me. Oh man, the internet in the jungle. All right, where are we at, man? That was going pretty well. Yeah, eating steak every day is slightly less miserable than sure. Oh my God. Yeah, it's not good to have spirochetes drilling holes in your nerves. It's really really not good. Back is absolutely killing me. So tomorrow we're going to have another psychedelic uh, 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 session. I'm going to experiment during the day, hopefully, with placement of the speaker and try to get the bugs worked out, because I sure am tired of things falling over and echoes and glitches and just caveman technical problems. But it's true, I'm not technologically savvy to the point where it's probably pretty ridiculous, considering that it's like 2021, but pretty incredible though, man. The other day when I was reading that light, that the scientists are using it to move objects, it's really, it's subjective. So there's an element of taking it all with a grain of salt, I guess. But the serendipity, the timing, when certain things are introduced into my field of awareness relative to what's going on internally, it just becomes impossible to deny the reality of the universal mind, and our obligation to ourselves and to the world is to cultivate, strengthen our relationship, to come into balance with it, to acknowledge it, and I think that a lot of the mandates of religion and different spiritual practices are geared towards certain objectives that they actually hinder. And so it's like the subjugation of the will to this higher being. It's not entirely wrong, I think, that the real trick, though, is not to surrender our sovereignty to some imaginary entity, but to find the humility and the wisdom to know, to be able to distinguish between our own wills and desires and wish demons and true intuition. And that, I don't know how well I articulated, but that has been like the biggest struggle for me, to come to terms with potentiality and actuality, with it's a balance of concepts of power, I guess. Wait, how did I put it in the description? I put it really well, I think, to confidence with humility, spontaneity with wisdom, conviction with compassion, enthusiasm with prudence, and faith with skepticism. That's what we have to accomplish. And one of my greatest struggles in this path of coming to terms with the reality that the universe is not a blind, probabilistic totally material, randomized system, but constraining my expectations, and to not make the mistake that almost every magician is guilty of, which is to think that his magic can do more for him than it can. Man, I was bummed that the backing track cut out when it did, because that was my favorite part of the song. Well, I guess I'll play another song, because I feel like I said everything that needs to be said ever again, really, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of joking, but in a way, tonight I think I managed to summarize the essence of the message and how we need to relate to it and what we need to do about it. I think the biggest difficulty, I'm seeing more and more articles about how people are quitting their jobs, they're dissatisfied with matrix reality, but, in my own journey, I've, and the conspiratorial part of me that really can't help but believe that the elite are doing this shit on purpose, because the primary impact of COVID and, well, chronic, I wouldn't say that everyone is in a numb, careless state, but I have been. I was shocked and horrified to take a psychedelic again after like a year of, my health has been in decline. I got excuses all day long, but I was horrified to realize how far away from my fundamental self I had drifted, and how dead I had become, and it really has nothing to do with what's happening on the global stage. That was about me and events in my own life. Totally lost my train of thought there, but that's also because I saw a question, I think. Something about UFOs. No, I don't think that, I don't think that the government's benefit at all. Like, there's a lot of really crazy shit in the conspiracy theory world, and I think that it would do us some good to consider these things. I am extremely skeptical of Big Pharma. I think that it's hard for me to understand how anyone could trust them. I mean, when you look at like the fact that they have like formulas to determine like if their medications injure or kill however many people, they have precedents that have been set for the lawsuits and the amount of money that's going to cost. And then they don't look at like whether the medication works or whether it's safe. They just do a calculation to determine whether it's still going to be profitable after all the lawsuits are settled. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take anything manufactured by these people. They also will raise prices on medications that people depend on to survive, to the point where they're definitely inaccessible unless you have really good insurance, knowing that they're killing people. And so placing your, or Bill Gates, trusting Bill Gates. I mean, you guys, I try to write off conspiracy theories. I really do, because that's how you should approach everything. With analysis and critical thinking and as much intelligence as you possibly can, and without bias, which is where people on both sides of nearly every argument fail to suspend their bias and really truly be objective. But at any rate, trusting pharmaceutical companies, people like Bill Gates, that it's come out that he had spent an extraordinary amount of time with Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the comments that he's made are truly disturbing. I mean, you're going to put your well-being in the hands of the big pharma and that guy, and clearly there's there's an issue. Um, but the UFO thing as a conspiracy, they're okay. Oh, all right. This is where let me finish this pharmaceutical thing. I actually didn't get to the point, which is this. People are talking about how the vaccine is a poison, it's got mind control agents and all this shit. The only people that are taking it are the people whose minds are under control anyways. So I think it's much more likely that the vaccine actually is going to work, and they know that something much more deadly is coming right behind it, and then all the free thinkers and the people that are not subordinate to them are going to be killed. And they're also going to look really stupid, and no one's ever going to listen to them ever again. So, you know, the fact that so many people that question the vaccine don't seem to have even considered it from that perspective is pretty fucking scary. And it should be humbling for people that have taken that position without even stopping to think the most obvious thing. You know, the elite are not that stupid, they're not unsophisticated, and they're going to have an awareness of what I just described. So there's that. And then, you know, in the UFO thing, you have to look at the key bono, who benefits. Yeah, well, neither am I, but it is true that, you know, we can be just as dumb as the sheep, and it's important to acknowledge that with grace and humility. Because it's true, it doesn't make any sense. You know, so they're going to kill off all of the mindless sheeple that are totally subordinate, and then all of the free thinkers and rebels are going to survive because they didn't take the vaccine. They're smarter than that. And then the UFO conspiracy thing is mostly motivated by people whose religion is threatened, and you have to think the key bono. I don't see that the religious or that the governments benefit from faking a UFO invasion. I mean, people I've seen conspiracy theory videos where they're predicating this idea on this. They're like, yeah, they're gonna make a common threat so that the planet comes together against a common enemy. Oh no! Like, that's the best thing that could ever happen. So, you know, it is terrifying to me that on both sides, on every side of the argument, you see these complete black holes in the process of analysis that, you know, are just so massive, holes in every narrative so big that you can drive a truck through them. You know, the vaccine killing all the sheeple that are taking it and leaving the free thinkers, the divide and conquer, the same people that are saying that the elite want to divide and conquer are also telling us that they're going to fake a UFO invasion and it's going to bring the planet together against a common enemy. But who, other than them? Like, oh, well, I mean, that's the only reason I could think of, that, you know, they're afraid that the unwashed masses are going to climb over the fences of their gated communities and eat them all. And so creating an enemy that is not them, because they're so afraid of what we're going to do if we don't have an imaginary enemy to fight. Well, of course they want a one-world government. And here's one of my most unpopular opinions, and it's something that I'm absolutely convinced of. And it's another area where people's cognitive processes, you know, I feel like it really just elucidates the want. The Illuminati are real, or at least they were real, and they're not bad. What Adam Weishaupt was striving to do is exactly what needs to happen. Nationalism, without borders, without nations, without that separateness, how are you going to have wars? The other thing that Adam Weishaupt wanted to do is get rid of religion, but he didn't want to completely eradicate spirituality. Just all of the bullshit fairy tales and superstition and oppressive religious antiquated ideas, and actually teach this process that leads to gnosis and illumination on a global scale, and get rid of borders and get rid of the church. And of course, the Christians, when they got wind of this, said, "Oh no, it's the devil," because what actually happened, the way that the Illuminati were exposed is that one of Adam Weishaupt's messengers was hit by lightning, and he was carrying a note that resulted in Adam Weishaupt's house getting raided and his papers getting seized. And so that is another thing that's always blown my mind about conspiracy theorists. There's all this conjecture and people, well, I honestly, Charles, why? Why do you think borders are important? That's just brainwashing, honestly. I mean, I hate to call you brainwashed, but it's indoctrination. Borders are not important. Borders are how enemies are created. This is how they keep the world divided. This is why we still have wars. Without the concept of borders, how do you, it's very difficult to get people to turn their guns on citizens of their own country. But, they don't even have to be other races. If you can tell a guy with a gun, those guys over there are German, shoot them, the soldiers will do it, and it's not true that that the soldiers won't shoot. Yeah, exactly. They're I mean, we're gonna have to just agree to disagree, Charles. I think that nations and borders and countries and flags and all of that kind of shit is just it's only there as one of the mechanisms of the divide and conquer. If there's only one world with one common goal, and we don't have all these nations that are divided with their own agendas and some concept of like separate prosperity, who do you fight? Who's your enemy? And I mean, I know you're a free thinker, dude, but we all have these, you're exposed to these ideas throughout your life, and so this concept of like loyalty to a flag or a nation or, it's just provisional programming. It's not real. The reality is, I think that syncretic systems all across the board, genetic, political, spiritual, musical, no, people used to separate, but I think that identifying with, it's like, you don't want to be a static individual. That is not like, when a system doesn't evolve, like think of stagnating water, that's death. So, people used to be tribal, but then those tribes blended, they expanded. The borders between the Anglo-Saxons and the Welsh or whatever dissolved, and they became a nation. And then those nations became continents, and then the European Union. And so these borders and divisions, the wall between Germany, the two Germanys, nobody wants to go put that wall back up. The dissolution of boundaries, the expansion of our consciousness as an individual process, reflected as a global process, implies that we would establish this external unity that is a reflection of the internal process of unity and connection. Yeah, one nation, one planet, one people. These old paradigms may have served a purpose. They wouldn't have happened if they were without purpose, I don't think. But I think that now we need to transcend all of it. And an alien invasion would be the perfect catalyst. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for maybe an hour. but I've got to go. My back is killing me.
Good night.